for everybody here, I'm Julie Cole. So I am a person in long-term recovery. Established my recovery in July of 1998. And so that's so weird because I don't think I'm old enough for that, but it is what it is. And I have done a number of these community workshops for Pavillon. So my normal topic for them is language of recovery so that we can work on languaging pieces and reducing stigma. And so, but I just did that one, I think last year. So we decided, I said, when Amy and I were talking, she said, "Do you have a topic?" I said, "Do you have a topic?" And we put it out and asked folks for feedback on topics they'd like to talk about. And somebody said, "What about mindset and recovery?" And I said, "Okay." And I never followed up to get more information from what they meant. But I'm like, absolutely. I love talking about perception and mindset. I really think that our capacity to grow and meaningfully grow in recovery is tied to our mindset and our perception. So it's a really good topic for even a small crowd. And it's something that I've had to challenge myself for a long time. So, professionally, I have a private practice where I do addictions counseling and support for families. And I also have a somatic coaching practice. I'm in the process of becoming a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I won't go into all what that means, but it's just a way of engaging the body for healing. And it has changed my life and my own personal life with my therapist. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm also a consultant. There's somebody here who's got to be in a couple of the things that I've been in this week. But currently, one of my big consulting projects is in South Carolina. We have 5 training bodies that do peer support training that have different curriculums. So I've been hired or contracted with addiction professionals of South Carolina to create a consolidated curriculum and a training of trainers so that all the training centers are operating under the same training material and training philosophy. So I'm in the thick of that right now, doing that. And then I do a lot of community trainings like this, so continuing education and all kinds of stuff, keynote speaking at events and trainings and all kinds of fun stuff. So I don't like to do just one thing, and I don't like to sit still. So I don't understand people who can sit in a counseling office 10 hours a day. That makes me want I love doing counseling, but I have a threshold. I like doing the coaching. I have a threshold. I like consulting work. I have a threshold. So I get to do a little bit of all of it. And I love this topic. I get to talk to you all a little bit about mindset this today. I'll just start out real quick. Monday night, my water softener busted and it put resin through my entire plumbing system. And right now we're trying to decide if we're going to have to repipe our entire house. So I'm without water, staying at my mom's house with my kids. I get to sleep in a full bed with my dog and my youngest child, which is fun because she elbows me in the face 5 times a night. And I'm trying to manage that piece on top of my work. I know, isn't that weird? I don't know how to make it. It's okay. Or you want it so the recording can see? We'll take it off of sorry. We're trying to figure out, we'll take it off the view and then, so do gallery. Sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, mindset has been and perception has been a big part of what I've had to do this week. And I'm going to say this. I've been busier this week in terms of just consulting, training, and community touch points, and I've been so grateful for it. I get to show up at things like this, and it gets me out of myself. And so I'm really grateful that y'all are here tonight. I'm not a believer. I'm a believer that whoever comes. So sometimes I'm presenting to 500 people, and sometimes I'm presenting to 5 people, and I think that they're all just as valuable. So I'm glad you guys are here, and I think that we'll all get what we need to for tonight. And at the very least, if y'all don't get anything, I'm out of myself for an hour, and I'll have to think about the fact that I'm going to go back to my mom's house tonight and stay in the full bed with my little kid, and then get up in the morning and try to back flush my system to try to save my house from being repiped. So we'll see. I did not start the week thinking I was going to end it with a construction project. Fun stuff. I look like I don't have arms, y'all. In the video. Sorry. Okay. The other thing is I will entertain myself, so y'all don't have to worry about it. So when I say mindset, what do y'all think? Like, what comes up for you guys?
Like the way you see the world or what's happening.
Okay.
I guess that's
So they're actually, it's an interesting because they're very interrelated, right? For sure. So in case anybody didn't hear online, she's saying it's the way you see the world, right? And that could be perception too, but mindset and perception are very interrelated. And I'm actually going to talk about the difference here. It gets really muddled when you start trying to get into it too much, though. Yeah. Anybody else? And you guys online can jump in. If you raise your hand, I can't see you. So you can just pop in and say, Julie, I want to, hey, Julie, or whatever.
I mean, I think part of it can be your attitude about things.
Yeah. And do you mind like parceling that out for me just a hair so I understand more?
If you're going to, like, a situation happens and if you're going to have a positive or negative attitude about that, like there's the situation you're dealing with, it's the situation's not going to change, right? But you can change your attitude.
Yep. Great. Yeah.
It's just kind of like you just said, like, I get to. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a shift, right? It's like it's such a small thing, but it's everything, right? Would either one of y'all like to share?
I don't know. I keep thinking that like glass half full or
yeah. And I would say that like, so positive and negative, like I get to versus and then glass half full and half empty is really kind of the differentiation of perception. So it's a great example, right? One is like I have a fixed mindset, I'm kind of stuck in my ways, and then I can have a growth mindset where I'm not stuck in my ways, but how I show up and see it in the moment is more perception, right? And so I love that differentiation. Thank you. Did you have anything? Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I know you got a whole,
It's in there.
we have the whole coaching history, right? So I would say like thinking about, mindset's almost like an overarching piece, right? It's like an overarching piece. So you can see it on the screen. That's what I wanted. And then perception is a part that influences, right? So we have mindset here. And then perception kind of plays in here. And perception, can grow or it can reinforce or it can challenge our mindset, right? That makes sense? So an example I'll give is a mindset issue might be, I like or I don't like tattoos, okay, right? And perception is the influence of that. Tattoos mean this, right? So if you like tattoos, they might be freedom, they might be art, they might be something that you really appreciate. I'm just looking at you because you're as tattooed as me. I've got all mine covered up, but I'm head to toe. So so that's the perception, because a lot of times why people, and if you don't like them, it might be because you have an idea or a stigma about it, right? And so the perception drives the mindset. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So if you were to shift your perception, a lot of times your mindset shifts in concert to it, which is really important thing when we're thinking about recovery. But I'll get into that in a minute. So everybody like that example? Is that one that I made that up on the way here, y'all? I told her, I said, I did a whole PowerPoint. I got here, I was like, I'm not doing the PowerPoint. I changed my mind. Okay, so because that's part of the differentiation. Okay, so mindset really is more like it's our kind of our way of seeing the world. And then perception is more like the way that we what's the word I'm looking for? Hold on. This is where my stressful week comes into play. Just give me a second. I'm doing this trauma recovery thing too, that the more I to manage my trauma responses less and kind of let them go, the more my ADHD gets unmasked. And so I've actually been like pure unadulterated ADHD for the first time in life, forever. So, the way we interpret, that's the word I'm looking for. The way we interpret, things, sensory input in the moment. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. They're really interrelated. A lot of times, if you actually see people talk about them, they talk about them like they're interchangeable terms. But if you had to give them a piece, to hold on to, it's that. Okay, so a great recovery example, right, is that if you believe in multiple pathways to recovery, okay, then your perception of those pathways is going to be like I actually have a lot of people who tell me they believe in multiple pathways, but when I start talking to them about their micro beliefs or their perception of other pathways than their own, that really tells me where they stand, right? And so what I find is a lot of people say that they support that, but then the perception piece challenges that. For example, people say, I believe in multiple pathways of recovery. And then you say, okay, great. So what do you think about medication assisted treatment? And they're like, well, being on methadone is not recovery. You're not in recovery. And I go, well, that's a multiple pathway piece, right? Most of the time, what we have to understand with perception is that the things that drive that are past experiences, right? I would even say this is like emotional memory in particular. So our past experiences, and it's a lot of times where we see our fears, insecurities and wounds come up. And in that way, mindset protects it. Because if I just believe that that's true, then I don't have to change it, right? And so a lot of times, so one of the greatest activities I do, especially when people are arguing about a point, and I did this, I was at the Addiction Professionals Conference, I was doing a training, and we had people arguing about like little pieces of things, right? Little pieces of things and little pieces of things. And I'll take something like, I need a book or something. Actually, I'll take this. Okay. So I'm going to stand, I need somebody to stand up for me. Actually, I use you and I use you. Okay. So when you look at this, tell me what you see. And this is what it looks like.
Circle.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a color?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about the rest of it?
Square, 5 black dots, vertical.
Okay. And then what are you seeing? This is what it looks like.
Black rectangle with a clear rim around it.
Okay. So you're not seeing 5 black dots.
No.
Okay. And you're not seeing right? Okay. So this is perception, right? A lot of times we're looking at the same thing. And our experiences influence how we see it. We see this come up a lot in personal relationships.
Can I see the other side?
Yeah.
This
This is actually I laugh. I haven't ever taken it off like when I'm doing, especially if I'm recording stuff for coaching, for health coaching in the gym, I'll use that, but I'll put a magnet on it so it sticks to something and I'm not sitting there trying to like figure out how, or carrying a tripod into the gym. So I don't do that. I don't want that much attention. But anyway, so we'll see that sometimes in our relationships too, right? And this is where our past experiences, fears, insecurities, and wounds will come up because we'll be talking about an issue and we can't differentiate ourselves, right? Can't differentiate ourselves. Because if I sat here and said, I want y'all to tell me what you see, and y'all wanted to try to like let him know what you were seeing, you could see where communication breakdown would happen quickly, right? Because you're seeing very different things. You'd be like, no, it's got a circle. No, it's this. No. And you're looking at the same thing, right?
And when you read those, I was thinking like, for me, a lot of the times what I see is people don't understand, like that they don't know. I guess that's where fear comes, but it's
Sure.
when you don't understand something or know something, that was me, like wanting to see the other side of that, because I have no experience with it.
Yeah. So that's a great point, because sometimes it's, I'm gonna say ignorance, but I'm not saying that in the pejorative way. I mean, it's just ignorance in the sense of like a lack of experience, right? Not like ignorance. So I need to be clear, because a lot of times it's just a lack of experience or understanding. Yeah. And I think it's important because in recovery, like when we start talking about how this influences our recovery, right? We can get into a fixed mindset really quick. And we see this a lot in 12-step recovery in particular. And y'all, I am a product of 12-step recovery, need to be really clear. I also have a healthy cynicism about parts of the culture, right? Especially when we talk about the larger recovery movement at large. So that's why
But what
larger recovery movement at large.
cynicism, the part to the culture, what
To part of the culture.
part of
Right. For example, thinking that there's only one way. Like that, everybody who's not in AA is just trying to earn their seat here, or NA, right? 12-step recovery, or the idea that people can't actually go back to drinking. That, harm reduction isn't valid. I mean, there's 1,000 ways, we see it show up. And a lot of it is fear, right? When I do peer support trainings, the place I see that show up the most is because people are fearful that if they accept something outside of their own self, it threatens their own recovery, right? So that's a perception issue, although the mindset itself is fixed. And the irony of it is, I see a lot of people, especially people in recovery, think they have a growth mindset. They actually have a fixed mindset. But you can't convince them that they have a fixed mindset because they have a fixed mindset. So I'm going to say that. We'll start there. All right, so everybody kind of have that. I'm going to take a picture of that. Just so I have it. I'll entertain myself. Okay, because I'm going to erase that now. Because I like complexity and nuance, so I have to layer everything. Oh, this is so smooth. I told y'all my ADHD is in full effect, right? The other thing is that when we think about recovery, the experience really has to almost be like this. And when I'm going to say this, I'm going to qualify this and say, I don't think it's the gold standard. I don't think it's the only way. Okay. But I'm going to use it as an example for the sake of simplicity. Okay. So abstinence-based recovery, right? People who are in abstinence-based recovery have opted to not use anything. Okay. When we start here, we almost have to have a fixed mindset. When you're starting, your starting point is here. Why would that be?
You have to believe that you need to change. or
Okay.
That there's an issue.
Right. Yeah. You almost like you have no experience with any other way. So you have to do the exact opposite, right? You have to do the exact opposite. So fixed or binary mindset, right, is important. Like I'm either using or I'm quitting. Okay. And this is true with any change process. How many of us learn to like set a boundary? And then all of a sudden we're like a 2-year-old. Did my no dance for you yesterday. Like, no, 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 right? You have to learn to say no to everything and then start bringing yes back in. So that's an important part of it. If you introduce complexity and nuance too early in a change process, it actually can push people back towards the ambivalence. Okay. And it doesn't mean that like the change, like the goal has to be like, that's why it's important if we're setting goals with people for them to have their own goals. Because if it's ours, then they're going to get ambivalent because they don't like our goals. Or they start getting, squirrely. I tell people all the time, like, if I had to tell anybody one very firm reason why I'm still sober almost 26 years later, it's because I'm absolutely convinced that I can't drink. Like I know for sure I can't drink. I know it won't work. I proved that to myself 100%. So drinking is just not an option. Like it's an internalized part of me, right? That's part of my mindset. I can't drink. I don't want to either, by the way. That's the perception. I just have no desire to. I watch people drink and I go, well,
And
Yeah.
and that's a fixed mindset, what you're saying too, right? Because
It
you
is.
don't have any wiggle room.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's important to understand that there are times and spaces that having a fixed mindset around something is really important, right? Like if you have kids. I mean, if you have kids, you have to have a fixed mindset about things, right? You know, like there are times I just can't worry about what I think. I can't worry about what I want to do. I sleep in the, well, excuse me, I have to sleep in the, I have to sleep in the full bed with an elbow to my face every night, which I'm grateful for. Like, y'all, that's a gift. That's a mindset thing. It's a gift that I get to sleep in the bed with that baby.
I see, I'm having a little trouble seeing how that's a fixed mindset, because if anything, that seems like you're having to have a little open mindset.
It is.
Because you're changing the play, you know?
Yeah, it can be more fixed because I'm not allowing myself like to, I just don't have, I can't give myself the space to think about what that means for me, right? Now, the growth mindset is going, like, it is a gift to sleep in the bed with that baby. It's a gift that I get to stay at my mom's house. When there's people who
Right.
don't have options when that kind of stuff comes up, right? I have an option. So that's the perception piece that brings me to a larger mindset piece. So part of this is understanding that you can have micro pieces of this. It's not just all or nothing. You know, and there are parts of our life we can have fixed mindset about that's really important to stay committed to that thing. It doesn't mean that we're not open to other perspectives. It just means that we have to, we stay fixed in that mindset or that perspective because it's important to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Fidelity in a relationship is an example of that, right? Like that's a choice that we bring in. Okay. There's lots of micro decisions. When you're in conflict in a relationship, fidelity becomes something that is really like, it'd be easy to go get attention somewhere else, right? It'd be easy to like feel like there's another option out there. So that's a part, like,
And I think too about, maybe like, what word am I trying to say? Like healthcare or, like health decisions,
absolutely.
right?
If I
Like
have
someone-
celiac, I'm not going to be eating any
Right.
gluten.
If somebody tells me like you have diabetes and you have to
Yeah.
change your diet, right?
Yeah.
Like in order to do that very well, I have to have that fixed mindset of like, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I have
Yeah.
to follow.
And there are people who don't, and they suffer the consequences, right? So there's like some pieces of this where there's interplay, right? But what I'm saying, especially about when we're talking about like recovery, like as we grow and we get time in recovery, we have to be able to settle into complexity and nuance, right? We stay in the fixed mindset. Well, how many of us know the person who's got 30 years who sits at the front of the meeting and corrects everybody's share and you know what I mean? Like they're not at peace, right? They're not at peace. That's not a peaceful person. So complexity and nuance become something that you grow in over time. We all have to start. So whenever we're starting something, we're almost always in a fixed mindset and we grow it over time. And sometimes we can tolerate changes in perspective or different perspectives, but sometimes we can't. Again, thinking about peer support training, I see this a lot. I won't say a lot. I mean, I can't remember how many cohorts I've done. And back in the day, we were the only ones doing it. I mean, I've certified hundreds of peer sports and done tons of trainings. And one of the things I can say about it is there's always in every other training somebody who's so ingrained in their perspective. And it's not always 12 steps. Sometimes it's faith community, right? Sometimes it's agnosticism, atheism, in more particularly. And so sometimes people get so locked into that they can't flex out of it, right? It's a real threat to their recovery and their mind. And so those are people I'll pull to the side and I'll go, maybe peer support isn't the career for you. And that's okay. Like this is the part where it's like, it's not bad. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's an important thing. Just like if I have celiac and I'm eating gluten, right? Like, does that make sense? So sometimes it's not a bad thing. It's about accepting it. Like me knowing that I can't drink or use other drugs either. Okay. So we grow in complexity and nuance over time. And that sometimes is a trial and error experience. So I'm gonna give me a second. Okay, so let's think about, I'm gonna take perception out of it and we're just gonna go to mindset. Okay. I introduced perception because it comes in and it is a part that's at play. But let's think about our perception of ourselves. Actually, we can do perception with that too. Our mindset about ourselves. For example, most of the time we know that when we say I am statements. So if I ask you to say I am, what's the first like descriptor you say about yourself? Okay. So yeah, that's a good one. I am an alcoholic. Okay. And then you said I am passionate. Are you specifically passionate about?
Well, I was just thinking, I get really fired up about things, so
Sure.
maybe that's like a nice way to say I get fired up about things.
For sure.
But it can be like good things,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I'm gonna advocate for people and like fairness and
Yeah.
You know, especially in this world of like substance use treatment, right? Like people getting quality treatment,
Yeah.
fair treatment, people
Yeah.
being respected,
Yeah.
treated as human.
Absolutely. I joke and tell people all the time, God gave me a stronger sense of justice than he did self-preservation, right? If I know something's right, I will march up and say it in front of anybody. My ex-husband used to say, he said, I've never seen anything like my wife walking up and putting a finger in a legislator's face and telling them off. You know, like I'm not like that anymore because there's a part where that can work against you,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? But like yeah. If I think it's the right thing, I will forego my, reputation, not my credibility, but my reputation. I don't worry if I look stupid or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
This was me yesterday in the middle of Highway 76, right past Three Dog Road, with a snapping turtle the size of my this big in the road, and everybody's going around it. And I pull off and I'm running down the road and I stop traffic and I'm trying to get the snapping turtle, and he's like jumping and trying to bite me, and I'm like, ah! And so I'm thinking it's just gonna be real quick. I'm gonna run this poor snapping turtle off the road, and no, we got into a fight. So fortunately, it was a van full of work guys, and they jumped out. One of them grabbed him by the tail, and somebody was trying to drive around him, and I stopped traffic in the middle of the road, like stop, and they're like. And nobody went anywhere until we got the turtle out, right? But I get it, because that's how I am. Like, I am not gonna watch somebody run over this damn turtle. He was huge. Right. Huge. I'm not gonna watch somebody run over a turtle. Not gonna happen. So yeah, I get that. What about another I am statement? Okay. These. Okay. Either one of y'all like to weigh in?
Oh, I was just thinking like what I do for work,
Yeah.
like I'm a social worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
W here myself. Okay. I am social worker. I am Groot. Okay. Okay. Urge, do you want to add anything? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Hold on, give me a minute. I'm trying to decide how I want to go. You are getting me off the cuff tonight. You can see that I actually really love doing this. Okay, so I'm gonna pull one of these two, because these are like descriptors that are like labels, right? That are like states, right? These are traits, and so I really want to kind of get into that because that's where perception can. I mean, it can be with a social worker too, right? Like it can be an alcohol. Okay, so I am passionate. So let's think about how that could be. If I'm thinking about that from a binary perspective, right, or a fixed mindset, how might that present?
That you don't always use reason
Okay.
on your emotions.
Okay, so it could be driven by emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Like me running out in the middle of traffic. Cause I am not gonna watch somebody run over a turtle that big. He was huge. Okay, driven by emotion. What else? This doesn't have to be like, I want us to understand, I'm not trying to drive towards anything that's like functional or dysfunctional, positive or negative. I'm just trying to like get into it a little bit. I'm not gonna jump in and give answers. I have to make y'all participate.
Did you say consuming, like you're so
Mhm.
passionate, it consumes every
Yeah.
It could be
thought,
consuming,
everything,
absolutely.
all of it.
Think about positives too. I mean, I know I said we're not gonna label it, but I really want us to think about where it could be, and from a fixed perspective, it could be a good thing.
Well, I think it could, the positive, I mean, you can think about, I guess this could be both, it can
Yeah.
fall positive or
Yeah.
negative, like the energy, right? Like
Yeah,
the positive is like energetic about things and I don't know.
Yeah.
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 But then the opposite of that can be like the energy drain, you know?
Mhm. So you could have, I mean, it could be that it amps you up, right?
Right.
But if we think about it, like even with consuming, right? Consuming might be a good thing. If I'm
Right.
like doing advocacy and I
Right.
need to like not worry about what other people think, my kid is calling me. I'm not worried about, I can't worry about what other people think. Consuming isn't a bad thing. Sometimes I got to put the blue blinders on and go forward, right?
Well, and that could lead to achievement, you know,
Yeah.
the,
Absolutely. So what we could have is I mean, it could result in achievement. It could also result in, I won't say failure, learning opportunities.
Well, it kind of depends on what you're passionate about
Mhm.
too, like,
Yeah.
this. A lot of times we're passionate about something we need to change.
For sure.
In case of advocacy or something,
Yeah.
but we also be passionate about a hobby.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. Well, now, so I used an example that Kayla and I were talking about before you guys came in here when we were starting the Courage Center. Like I was in an office behind a church, right? Like a house that they use for outreach that they didn't use anymore. I was like by myself. It's fun. And then we're trying to get a community center. We had a piece of property that we were looking at in downtown Lexington. And the planning commission wouldn't change the coding,
Like the zoning.
zoning, that's the word I'm looking for, thank you. Good answer, okay. The zoning, and I get it, because in downtown Lexington, they're saying with the planning commission is that if we do this, and the next thing that we're gonna have a Dollar General next door, right? And they're trying to like control that piece of it. Although the county council planning commission is not doing the same job anyway, especially in Chapin. So they said no, and so it was what we call a NIMBY situation, and not in my backyard. People were showing up at court saying, we don't want these people there, we don't want this, we don't want that. Okay, so we had that piece of it, those people, we don't want those people. And then on the other side of it, there are people on our side of it who are on the other side going, you don't understand our issue. Everybody wagging the finger, right? You don't understand our issue. And I don't have control over the people saying what they're saying on the other side. But I just said, pull our troops in. And I said, we need to stop pointing fingers at people in courthouse steps and start trying to understand. Okay. And this is a great example, because if we were just sitting there on two sides of it, trying to force each other to see the other person's perspective, we're in a circle jerk and we don't ever get anywhere. Right. So we're in this fixed mindset and we're going around and around and around. So what we did was I said, let's find the people who signed, like they signed in and people wrote letters and we were allowed to have copies of the letters. So we respectfully asked if we could come visit. And we went door to door where we could. We gave the neighborhood notice and they knew we were coming. And I just said, I don't want anybody to do anything but ask, what's your story? Do you have any experience with substance use? And overwhelmingly, the people who are the most resistant to it were people who had experience. Their brother, their son, their dad, their mother, their sister, whatever, right? One of the people we actually even engaged and ended up coming out a couple weeks later and reviving their son with Narcan. And now that person's house may become a recovery center for Courage Center. So like, we don't know where this goes, right? But if we had just stayed in that mindset, they don't understand, right? So it's important to understand like complexity allows change. It can also allow chaos. And there's a process where you have to find a balance with that too, right? Growth mindset isn't also everything. Sometimes we gotta have a stopping. Gotta know our limits. We gotta know where we need to throw the chips in. Like that property, we need to throw the chips in on that property and go with the one we had. And they built on the one that was usable, right? Okay, so I think it's important. All right, so. Ooh. Let's talk about empathetic. What does that mean?
The first thing that comes to my mind is like, and this is stuff, but you feel too much.
Okay, so you feel too much. And how does that play into being empathetic? I love it because immediately you come to a narrative, right? Because, well, let's just say, why do you feel so much?
Negative, which doesn't have to be negative.
Right.
But I think you probably tend to feel too much because my understanding of empathy is you can relate. You know, as opposed to sympathy where you just feel sorry for somebody, empathy is actually you've kind of either been there kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know, it's close to.
And sometimes, and we see this a lot in the helping field, and this is something I do a lot of supervision with and peer support. So this is why I bring it up, is that sometimes we relate too much, right? Partially because we're trying to resolve our own stuff, which is where being passionate can be dangerous, right? Like we want to advocate for people because we didn't have somebody to do this, or we want to protect people because we weren't protected, right? Like this, there's this like trauma piece that can come into it too. So we have to be really conscientious, which is also why if we open the portal too much, it can become chaos. You know, it could be too much all over again. So I think it's important to understand when we talk about ourselves, like, and we're thinking about ourselves, especially ourselves as people in recovery, right? People in recovery or helpers in the recovery field. We have to be really conscientious about that. Any other thoughts?
It makes me think about, like the sponsor-sponsee relationship and that, you know, that sponsor, empathizing, right, and relating to that sponsee, but not over personalizing it when that person relapses or struggles or, you know.
Yeah, and we know that, you know, because there's no real supervision or structure and sponsorship, that could be a, you know, mixed bag too, right? Yeah, like it can be over involved in somebody's lives. And many of us all in this, like I went through a process in sponsorship where I had the flock, called the flock, right? Had 20 sponsees and 30 grand sponsees. And I mean, it was like total chaos, but I was like directing their lives, right? And they were doing great until they weren't. Then they were pissed at me and I was pissed at them. And it was like, wait, this is not how this is supposed to be. You know, this is not how this is supposed to be. So you have to be really conscious, right? Yeah, I love that. What about the perception? I'm gonna go. No, I'm not, because I don't want to. We'll do resilience. Let's talk about our perception of resilience. We talk a lot about resilience. It's such a buzzword. So let's take a minute and define what resilience is. I'm asking y'all to help.
I think of overcome. It's what words coming to my mind.
So overcome.
Overcoming, yeah.
Would you say that that's resilience or result of resilience?
Result.
Okay.
I mean, in some ways, it could be.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, like you basically when I think of resilient is you bounce back. You know, you hit with something and continue.
Sure.
And that's part of overcoming too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that because it can be the catalyst, it can be the result, it could actually also be the process. Yeah.
Could be too, like I know it's the bounce back, but like standing firm regardless of what keeps coming at you.
Mhm.
Um,
In general, when we think about resilience, we're thinking about increased capacity around whatever it is. So
I
it's a-
think like bamboo, instead
Yeah.
of just breaking,
Yeah.
bamboo don't break.
Right. But unlike bamboo, we have a whole emotional scope and all this other stuff, right? So I think it's important. That's a great analogy. And, right. And so there's the yes to that. And we're complicated humans with this interplay. Bamboo isn't, neurally connected to other humans that have the, opportunity to like totally wreck their lives and, like all these, so I love it.
it's very invasive.
Yeah, it is very invasive. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Okay. We're gonna think in general of increased capacity, right? Like resilience is increased capacity, and resilience is like a muscle. The only way you increase capacity is through what? Huh?
Exercising it.
Yeah. Kathy, go Kathy.
Yes. I was just thinking, Julie, I know I'm listening to everything and it's really good because I think about resiliency and thinking about my past and, what I used to think were my weaknesses. Now I feel like they're my strengths and being able to bounce back and look at those things that I thought were so negative as being something positive.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's increased resilience. I really want everybody to understand what happens a lot of times. And so I'll kind of end out with like taking a shot at something that I see a lot in recovery too, which is the reason why I want to talk about this. I think it's really important. It's good for us in the beginning, but if we keep doing it, it actually drives us away from resilience. Hi. Where am I going? Oh, yeah. Toxic positivity. You got this. It's all good. At least I want to think about Brene Brown. At least you can have a baby. At least Sarah has good grades. Have y'all seen that video? Okay. Yeah. So the reason why I say this is toxic positivity actually decreases resilience. And it's really important to understand this. And those of us who've done it with people, we know, right? And how do you feel when people do that to you? Like there's a difference between, hey, you got this, I trust you and I believe in you, and you got this, I can't handle you having this experience or emotion, I'm uncomfortable with it, so I'm going to take over or I'm going to push you away. Okay. And so it's really important to understand when we have toxic positivity, we actually don't encourage people to be where they are, which is what builds resilience. Resilience is about being in the moment. That's where you're able to come back because you're able to be in the moment and deal with what's right in front of you.
That reminds me of, and my son just said it to me yesterday, but you have to say that because you're my mom.
Hey. Yeah.
Sorry, I went to the one in Lexington.
Oh, welcome. Yeah.
Sorry, that's cool.
Yeah, you get to hear just about toxic positivity as we roll.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your son saying?
Well, no,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
just like, your child thing too, we have to say that because you're my mom.
Yeah.
It's just like, we really mean it, but it's too much for you have to, it doesn't mean, the more you say it, we say it as encouraging parents.
Yeah.
But it's that, it loses its meaning after a while.
Yeah.
Or it's
Absolutely.
like a false positive almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we do so much work on motivational interviewing. We're training people, right, to be able to help people because a lot of the times we have ideas and a lot of times toxic positivity is about our own discomfort with somebody else's stuff. And it's a lack of resilience in us. The more we actually become more resilient, the more we can sit with complexity with another person, right? And we don't have to take over. We don't have to have their future. We don't have to have that stuff. So it's an interesting thing. So resilience is actually a result of expanded, perception. That's not me. Okay. Very good. Oh, so Jesus calling. So one of the greatest tools we can, curiosity, am I spelling that right? God, I'm gonna pull an Alan Lamb and say spelling don't count, okay? Curiosity, having a curious mindset, right, is one of the greatest ways to build resilience. I want to sit with that for a second. Let's explore that. I'm gonna end out with that. So let's sit with that for a second and think about it.
What's the bigger picture here? You know, like, why am I going through this? What can I learn from this? What's going to be the benefit in the long run?
Sure.
Because if you're not curious about that, then it's easy to be like, woe is me.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
I'd actually even challenge you as an evolution to that is like, so like that's a great thing, right? To learn to go, this could be meaningful in the future. There's still a part where we're avoiding the experience in the moment, right? So like a beautiful thought is to start getting curious about why am I saying what was me? You know, why do I think this is all bad? And I think it's important because it's part of like I laugh because in pop psychology, right, we have this idea that like mindfulness is like not having anything in our mind. Mindfulness is actually just being in the moment with what it is. Like that doesn't, and not giving it a label that's good or bad, right? So one of the things I've been doing is in my grief process through my divorce, I've been, you know, chronicling parts where I'm having hard days because it's important for people to see. I just let it come and go, right? I mean, when I got sober, I had to teach myself how to cry. Like I was so shut down, I didn't know how to cry. So to cry and to express things is a gift, right? And so like the other day, Tuesday, when my whole, like, I did a video and I was like, here I am, my whole life is blown up. I just want people to know like life is life and it's okay. I don't have to get stuck in it today either, right? And so that's a part where even, you know, an evolution of that is growing resilience by being able to sit with the emotions in the moment. But that's not a bad strategy. I need to be clear. It's just like an evolution over time is that learning to sit with it. But we have to microdose that for real. We have to titrate that because it activates our nervous system and we can get overwhelmed and shut down.
I've never, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Sean, sorry, I was late, alcoholic, May 2023 graduate of Pavillon.
Yeah.
So so I've always been a very curious person. I was a journalist for 15 years of my life.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to take this off.
No, you're fine. And so I was I've always been interested in other people's stories and stuff like that. And that, I think that's actually part of the alcoholism because it makes it seem like I'm a really nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy syndrome.
You know what I mean? And so I didn't realize about the pause until until my alcoholism, because you want what you want when you want it now.
Yeah.
And I never really, you know, it wasn't until I realized that, you know, I've got a drinking problem is that I've probably never paused for anything ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was kind of but you said something just now about being curious to why I even did that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever questioned why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never been curious to myself.
Well, and that's
I've always been curious about other people's stuff.
Well, that's a great way to not be curious about yourself, right? Sorry. That's what I said the other day. You are so blunt. But seriously, it's a great way to not be curious about yourself. And I will say this, like, yeah, it's a great way to not be curious about yourself. And there's like, again, those are pieces where you have to evolve it because asking myself why I'm having this experience. So I will say this is a piece where I challenge 12-step culture. I love like when I'm brand new and I'm shaking and baking and I'm coming off of it and I'm, you know, gee, and grand, the wind stopped blowing, right? Like I've got this storm behind me and I'm trying to just make everything right all over again. I got to sit with the truth that there's been harm caused, right? So seeing the part in the book where it says driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, whatever, my mind just went blank. God, it's been a long week. Self-delusion and self-seeking, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate, right? Like, and so seeing myself as selfish in the early days was helpful because I was such a martyr when I was drinking, but seeing that that was selfish was so important. But like calling myself selfish as I've progressed in my recovery actually kept me from resilience, right? Because it kept me enacted in shame. And so a lot of times what happens is in the program, I'll say, why am I this way? People say, it's because you're selfish. You're an alcoholic. It's the way you are. And it's like, that's a fixed mindset. That's just who I am. I had somebody in a meeting not long ago, 19 years in, say, I'm still the most selfish person I know. I said, are you the most selfish person you know? Or are you telling yourself you're the most selfish person you know? Right? You're not the most selfish person I know for sure. I know lots of people who are more selfish than that person, but that's the danger is that that's my perception of myself. That's the reality I'm going to create. Just like if I think everybody's going to abandon me, I'm not going to invest in relationships. Right. If I think that people are always going to reject me, I'm not going to like be authentic. Like there's all these pieces of the opposites of whatever my fears are. And that is a fucking like, that's why I try not to get into that too much, because that's like, it parcels out so many pieces. I'll say the last skill I would say, right, is everything's just information. So Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist, this is one of the things that she does, right? She comes from a really traumatized background. Her partner Jenna comes from a really traumatized background. And when they shared this on their podcast, I was like, 25 years sober. I'm like, holy shit, are you serious? That's the most revolutionary thing I've ever heard. Like everything's just information, right? And then when I do that, that's a way to practice a pause, because part of my perception is that everything is what I think it is. Right. And that is the part that reinforces the mindset. And so if I think everybody abandons me, right, then that's the filter I'm going to filter everything through. And I'm going to react to it and create it by guarding myself against that thing and not investing in those places. So one of the greatest things I got from believing that everything is just information is I get to be open-hearted. Because if it's just information, then if somebody is doing something that's problematic, I can communicate about it. I can move away. I have choice, right? It introduces choice. So these things introduce choice. And in every situation now, like the answer is yes, no, or negotiate, or maybe, like it offers choice. When I don't pause, there's no choice. I'm just barreling straight ahead, creating chaos. And we can do that in 1,000 different ways in recovery, right? 1,000 different ways in recovery. So I guess that's the part that I would lead us off with is like, these are cultivated skills that shift our perception of our relationships, of people, of the world. And then that in and of itself can flex our mindset out. It's really hard for me because a lot of times, and I wrote about this recently on I write a lot on my social media. I just said, just doing mindset work with people actually creates more activation in the nervous system, because then people are trying to open their mind, but they're not dealing with the things that keep them fixed, right? And so it becomes a portal to their wounds, and now they're just walking around with their skin turned inside out, which is why it's so important to be cautious with treatment, right? Like it's cautious not to do too much work, too deep, too fast when people can't. You got to titrate trauma treatment for people so that they're not turned inside out and they're coming out of treatment, because they're just going right back to using, So there's a lot of these pieces. So I'll leave us off with that. So I'd say your best skills are curiosity, pause. Everything's just information. There's definitely more skills, but those are ones that are easy to cultivate. They really are. And I'll leave with the Viktor Frankl quote. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. That space is where that space gives us choice, and that choice is where we get the opportunity to grow. Something to that effect, right? I'm not doing it right, but like that's what the pause gives us. The pause gives us space. Space gives us choice. Choice gives us growth. That's a good place to leave off.